Hello everyone, I'm Chloe Johnson and welcome to this Fresh Business Thinking webinar series, Lockdown Learning for Businesses, supported by BT. Fresh Business Thinking is proud to be a part of Skills for Tomorrow by BT, which is helping 10 million people in the UK make the most of life in the digital world. Working with us and other leading digital skills, enterprise and community organisations, BT has created and collated some of the best advice, information and support in one easy place to navigate. It's easy for anyone to access our webinars as well as discover other ways they or their family and friends can grow their confidence and skills to make the most of tech. All it takes to get started is to visit www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow, or you can click on the link in the comments section. Coronavirus has been a real challenge for small businesses and entrepreneurs across the UK. At Fresh Business Thinking, we're used to putting on events, sharing expertise, and encouraging and supporting networking. Throughout the pandemic, we knew this simply couldn't just stop. Perhaps more than ever, this is a time when as a business community, we need to come together and support one another. And we're lucky enough to work with organisations and individuals who are passionate about supporting entrepreneurs during this difficult time. One of those is our speaker today, Raj Krishnamurthy, co-founding partners and CEO of Freespace. Raj is an expert in user-centric thinking solutions and systems. He is deeply committed to customer success and is passionate about cultivating selective, deep, and global relationships. Today, Raj will explain how businesses are leveraging technologies to support social distancing and offer an overview of the key considerations of a social distancing plan. Raj will be talking for around 40 minutes and then we'll have some time for a Q&A. If you do have any questions, you can leave them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and we'll do our best to get to them later on in the session. That's all from me for now and I'll pass over to you, Raj.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for your time joining us on this webinar. As it says, I'll be talking about social distancing in the workplace. My name is Raj Krishnamurthy. I'm the CEO of Freespace. Freespace has been in the business of improving work environments for the last 5 years with technology. And we've been instrumental in delivering success at several businesses, some of which we will share later in the presentation. A few highlights of what I'd like to talk about today in the agenda is getting started with social distancing design. This is primarily valuable for businesses that run offices, be it large or small, but how to manage social distancing design to get you kind of started on the journey. Some people are already ahead in this curve. They have demarcated their space in different ways. But for those who are doing it, looking at doing it in a scientific way, we are presenting some solutions. The second section will talk mostly about how to use what we are essentially creating low-cost technology for immediate outcomes, because this is a situation which requires immediate fixes to get started. But then as we evolve those solutions and how the future is likely to change in terms of the world of work, how to build for medium and long term. So we'll touch upon some of these technology interventions that can actually help you not only in the near term in terms of social distancing, but also investments that can help you in the long term. So let's get started. Like Chloe said, if you have any questions, please write it down and we'll address all of them at the end, and I'll just spend as much time as you need to answer questions that might arise as we go along. So getting started with social distancing design. So what are the key considerations for social distancing, particularly in the workplace? And obviously, there's a lot of questions in people's minds. Once assume I walk in through the door, what are the challenges with monitoring temperatures for human beings coming in? What about going up in the elevator? What about entering through the main doors and going through the reception area and meeting people? And how long do I stay and say hello? How far I stand from them? All these are critical questions for a designer, for a thinker, in terms of how to manage social distancing. What we have done is we said that we are not going to be able to solve all the problems, but let's identify what are the top kinds of problems in the workspace. And one of the early considerations was, where do people spend most of their time? And this, in a small phrase, is captured with this phrase, dwell time. Dwell time is where you spend most of your time. So if you think about your day at work, you spend most of the time working at your workplace, which is your workstation. So we looked at the issue of the dwell time at desks, at workstations, and we found this interesting study that was done by CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, in the US, on a South Korean call center, which studied the spread of the COVID virus across 3 floors of the call center. And they had documented in the study that people across the 3 floors actually intermingled quite a bit. They went to common cafe areas. They took the common elevator. But interestingly, when the virus struck this office with a significant population getting affected, it was found that the spread was limited to one half of one floor. Even though people were moving around quite a bit, they were interacting, they were moving, they were going in the same elevator, they were using the same washrooms, but the spread was limited predominantly to one half of one floor, which essentially validated this fact that it is the time that you spend sitting in a place that is got the highest chance of the spread. So your design of how you sit and spend the most amount of time in your workplace is what's going to matter. And so a lot of our thinking has been based on this kind of outcome, and the focus has been on designing the desk arrangement, so to make sure people are able to minimize the chance of the infection. There are other considerations. So can people be made to comply to rules? So you set these rules saying you're allowed to sit here, you're not allowed to sit there. How do you encourage people to comply to those rules? How can you help people plan your work week? So if you say that you have a plan to have one group of people come in on one day, one week, and another group of people coming on another week, how can you help them? What tools can you give them to enable that? How about common areas, washrooms, coffee stations? Congestion in those common areas are a key consideration. So, for example, one of our customers have taken their washrooms, 8 urinals, 8 wash basins, 8 cubicles, and they've actually shut down 2 of the wash basins. How do you ensure that people are adhering to that, and how do you make sure that you minimize congestion, because now only half the spaces are available? We'll talk about all these considerations and how we have incorporated that into the design. There are other challenges that we will not talk about, like, for example, getting to work. London is a classic example. Getting to work itself will be a challenge in terms of using public transport. That is, just wanted to highlight that that is not part of the discussion today, but that's a challenge to be tackled. So, how would you go about redesigning an existing space? Most people are going to come into the work environment, they've got to get the offices restarted. They won't have a chance to move desks around, or shift spaces, or remove chairs. The many a situation doesn't allow you to do that at all from day one. So what we have designed is a solution where you can use your current floor CAD drawing and reconfigure the CAD drawing to allow you to calculate which are the spaces that you can use and which you can't, if you want to achieve that social distancing. So this particular tool is actually an online tool that helps you enter the threshold of social distancing. So if you say you want to have 120 centimeters, 1.2 meters shoulder to shoulder, you can simply enter that into the tool, and it will give you, for this particular floor, for example, it is saying that 48% of the spaces can be used in a socially distanced manner. So this automated tool is available. This is something that we have done. We have already implemented this for about 60 floors across the UK and the world. So this is a good example of using a geometric tool, an AutoCAD tool, to help you with showing which are the spaces available. Now, obviously, these thresholds can change. So, for example, if you say it is 180 centimeters, not 120, 180 centimeters, shoulder to shoulder, you're going to get an answer saying that it's only 30% of the spaces are usable. So 70% of your spaces are not usable. So that's an interesting challenge, because if you have people that were coming into the space, particularly if you now want to make this a flexible space where people can sit in places that they choose to, how would you manage the space? Because you can use only 30% of the space, and your 70% of the space is not going to be used. One of the ways of improving the performance of the space is to say that you will have two data sets. Say, for example, you may have a blue day where people can come and sit in blue spaces, and an orange day where people can sit in orange spaces. And each of these space sets are socially distanced from each other. So all the orange spaces are socially distanced, all the blue spaces are socially distanced. And now you can see that you can use up to 60% of the space. And what this does is this gives you the opportunity to create this concept called split desking. Split desking essentially spreads the occupancy across the space. So it allows you to use more of the spaces that you have, more of the desks that you have, albeit on different days. But what that does is, by putting people on different desks on different days, it reduces the viral load on each of the desks. So if somebody's sitting on the same space, the viral load is going to increase on that space. But if you particularly have a flexible arrangement where people are allowed to choose where they sit, although they choose the same place for the whole day until it gets cleaned again in the evening, they can be given this option of split desks where you can have different desks being used on different days. And that just reduces the viral load that may be on one particular desk being used every day. And that also helps you manage cleaning resources. So, for example, now you can target your cleaning resources to clean the blue desks on the day blue desks were supposed to be used. So, significantly helping the speed at which you can deliver with the same resources. So that's a good example for arriving a design for social distancing. Now, after you design it, what technologies can you use for some delivering some immediate outcomes? So there are three technologies I'd like to highlight today. One is using digital signage, and that is primarily for navigating large spaces, allowing people to show spaces as to where spaces are. It also can be used for dynamic wayfinding, for people to help people to show which spaces are located where, so that people can find the way around the office. And also for employee messaging. This is primarily those nudge messages that you want to have people consciously follow when you're still through the pandemic stages. The second technology I'll talk about is a very clever micro location technology called Spot. Spot is a smart sticker. It has got a multi-purpose QR code that we'll talk about as to how it is used. And the third technology is a mobile app. The mobile app is the Freespace mobile app is something that you can use for office scheduling, dynamic desk booking, employee assurance, and capacity and demand planning. So let's get on with looking at what these are. The digital signage is all about using large floor plates, large screens that are able to show you what the spaces are doing for that day. So, for example, this screen is showing that there are some spaces that are available to use today. Today is the blue day. So, here are the blue spaces that you can use. If you look closer, it highlights that it's a blue day, and it tells you that it's blue spaces that are in use. Now, it also can tell you whether a space is available or it's busy, and we'll come to how it registers that. But there's a way of people to register that they have checking into a space, for example. So, this is a simple technology that simply allows you to navigate the space and shows you where those available spaces are today that you can occupy. As people walk into the floor, they see the screen and they see, okay, this is where I am physically right now, and I can see where the available spaces are. Another thing that these solutions can give you is these kind of messaging systems. So this is, for example, Friday, a yellow day, and these are the yellow spaces for you, which are available, as you can see. And then it also gives you a messaging that gets dynamically changed. So, for example, a social distancing alert, which says, nudges people in the right direction. So the signage platform can be used for a variety of these solutions in terms of showing people the way, but also in terms of giving people messages as they use the space on the daily basis. The second technology solution I wanted to talk about is the spot tagging, the smart tag. So what are spot tags? Now you have seen how we have socially distanced the space into blue spaces and orange spaces. You have also seen that the signage screen can show you where those blue spaces are, for example, and where those orange spaces are. But when I go close to the place where I'm supposed to sit down, I am far away from the screen. How do I say this particular desk is a blue desk or this particular desk is an orange desk? And that is where the spot tags comes into play. The spot tags are essentially stickers which have got a unique QR code, and the QR code system is quite popular. As you know, you can use your mobile phone to scan some of these codes. It's a unique QR code that is unique to every tag, and that unique tag is actually assigned to every desk. So an orange desk might have an orange tag, a blue desk might have a blue tag. So now that you're able to go towards a space where you want to occupy, you come to a bay of desks, you're allowed to occupy any of those, but you can say for very surely, looking at a desk, this is an orange space, I can take this space today. And it has a number against it, and it has a unique tag, QR code against it, and you start using that space. Now that is allowing you to take the visualization of the office to the next stage, where you're not only showing people how to navigate the space, where those spaces are that you can use, which are the safe spaces to use today so that you're socially distanced, and then you go to that space and you actually tell them exactly which space they can use, and they can actually start using that space. So this has been quite successful. We have deployed over 60,000 of these tags to various customers across the world, and it's being used and implemented today. You will get to see in a minute about how these tags can be used, because they're very, because of the clever QR code, which is a unique QR code. Each of these tag actually has a small digital repository of information in the cloud, and using the QR code, you can actually read as well as write to that repository of information. And I'll explain how that can be done. So we have talked about the digital signage, we have talked about the spot tag, and now we're ready for the people. So we have prepared the infrastructure. Now let's see how we can talk to the people that now are obviously extremely nervous coming into a space which they don't know anything about. We thought a lot about what people would want from an app. And early days, you're just starting your plan to come back in. We believe the needs from people are going to be fairly limited, fairly stringent, but fairly limited. And their stringent needs are very simple. They want to be able to request a safe space that they can use for the days they need to be in the office. So I'm coming in next Tuesday. I need a safe space. Allocate me a space that is clean, and if possible, if you can reassure me by showing me that the space is clean before I start using it, I would really appreciate that. I want to be safe. So I would really appreciate if you can share, if I'm able to find out for myself that the space has been clean. Also, if you want your employees to follow split operations, so for example, managing split teams, so they're allowed to come in one day, 1 week, and not allowed to come in the next week, and there are advantages of that we'll talk about in a minute. The app can give them that information as which weeks they're allowed to come in and which weeks they're not. Further on, why would anyone want to come into the office? Now, there's a lot of people that are talking about the existential future of the office. You don't need an office. You can work from home. Why would I go into the office? Well, it's probably true for many people that they can work for a long time from home. But many of us either have a need to go into the office to do a few things that we just need the office environment to do, or there are some tools that we need to use in the office, um, or we need a quiet place which you can't get at home possibly. Or many of us actually are saying that, you know what, I can work from home, but on the days I go into the office, I want to make sure that I can sit in front of 3 or 4 of my colleagues and make sure that we can get something done together, because that's the thing that you can't do sitting at home virtually. I mean, you can, but you can't. Some things get done much better sitting face to face. So we believe there's an opportunity for using the app as a collaboration tool to actually say that I'm going to come into the office on Thursday next week if I know who else is coming. If that person and that person is coming, then maybe I'll want to come. And that's where the app can come into play. And we'll talk about how that can help. So very simply, planning the day, as you can see, the app has got some very simple features. You simply say, I want to come into the office on next Wednesday. You change the plan from work from home to work from office, and you can request amenities. Obviously, you do need a desk, so that's a given. But do you need a car park space? Do you need a locker? So those kind of amenities can be requested. And if you're coming into the office, those can be assigned before you come in. So that dynamic assignment of amenities of desks or what have you can be done. But you're simply saying you're coming into the office. The system will take care of everything else for you. The second thing that you can see on that particular day before you change your plan is who else is coming to the office, because obviously I'd like to know from my little circle, maybe a private circle, if somebody is coming in, then I'd be welcome, well, be very interested in coming in. So this my circle feature in the app allows you to do just that. And then when you come in, you, on the day before or the night before, you have been assigned a desk. Maybe you've been assigned a cycle stand because that's a unique thing that you have, and you've been assigned a locker. And on the day that you're coming in, you can also see how many people are actually using the office. So you can then decide how you want to manage that day. And then when you do come in, you can use the spot tag. Remember the tag that I talked about, which is stuck on the desk now. You can scan the tag, and using that, look at whether the space has been is ready for check-in for you. It's been reserved for you, so you can check into that space, and also use the tag to determine the usage of the space historically. When was it last used, and when it was last cleaned? And the reason it was, you can say when it was last cleaned, is because you can use the tag and have it used by the cleaning team to actually indicate cleaning cleaning activity of that space. So you can see how all this ties together. The social distancing using the tags can actually help demarcate the space as socially distanced, can help the cleaning team to identify which spaces are meant to be cleaned for the next day, so that that's absolutely done and checked whether it's cleaned or not. And then the users to actually use that to check whether it's been cleaned before they start using it. So this is a tool that we've built, which again, if you think about it, the tags are quite inexpensive, the design is quite inexpensive, the app is quite inexpensive. So these are all simply software tools that can help you get started. And the beauty with the app is that in the background, you have this powerful tool which allows you to plan your capacity. Say you're a mid-sized office or a large office, you have 200, 300 people, possibly 700, 800 people in a building. You can use this app to actually, in the back end, to actually plan that capacity. Maybe you have 4 floors of a building and you want to open up only 1 floor at a time. And this system will allow you to do that. But even if you have a small business, then again, the same principle can be used in order to enable people to come into work. We have the ability in the back end to do all kinds of different approaches for managing demand, and one of that is split groups. So for example, you might split your group into group A and group B. Group A may be able to come in on, say, the odd weeks, and group B comes in on even weeks. And what that does is it allows better planning of the space use, but also it reduces the business risk from infection. So if you divide your finance team into 2 groups, group A and group B, group A finance comes in on Monday, sorry, on 1 week, and group B comes in the next week. If the week that is in, somebody falls ill, that whole group can isolate, whereas the next group can continue to come in on the alternate weeks without causing any issues to your finance department. And those are some of the business continuity strategies people are using. So that was the short term. Those are solutions that are simply out of the box that can be used for the short term to get you up and running. How do you build and invest for the medium and the long term? Like I said, there's a lot of people questioning the viability of an office, but in Freespace and many of our partners and colleagues and customers that we are speaking to believe that there is definite value in the office to provide some very critical services for people in the long run. But obviously, understanding those office requirements, understanding how people use the space, understanding how you make the space relevant for people to use is very, very important. And that's where a lot of other solutions that we have traditionally have supplied will make a big difference. Some of the examples here are using the solutions for automation and compliance for the long run. Occupancy sensors that we are experts in can provide significant value in that live reporting and automation. Occupancy based, that occupancy sensors drives a lot of things. It can drive cleaning reports, which we can talk about in a second, and also managing congested spaces like washrooms and how that can help in the medium term. And the long term strategy we'll talk about in a second. So touch a little bit of occupancy sensors. These can actually help you in a lot of ways, and we'll show you from a social distancing perspective how that makes a difference. But there are broadly two types of occupancy sensors that Freespace has. One is what's called the individual workspace occupancy. This is a typical under desk mounted, battery operated, Wi-Fi connected device, which has a 2-year battery life, and it sends real time information on occupancy of a desk. It doesn't know who is there, so it's completely anonymous. It doesn't know it's me or you, or it doesn't know that, but it knows that somebody is occupying that space. And based on that, several services can be triggered. The TIM sensor, which is a ceiling mounted sensor, it's powered by mains power supply, 12-volt supply. It's TIM stands for thermal imaging module. From the ceiling, it's able to image the floor, and using thermal camera, able to determine how many people are there on that floor. So it doesn't take a visual image. It cannot again identify anybody, any human one from another, but it is looking at the thermal image and it is saying that there are 3 people on this floor. And that TIM sensor is able to look at occupancy of meeting rooms, and we'll talk about how that's valuable from both occupancy as well as social distancing point of view. With that background, let's see how these can be applied. So one application for this is social distancing compliance. So if you have these sensors deployed, like many of our clients have, if somebody occupies a space that they're not supposed to occupy, say it's on blue day and somebody goes and sits in an orange space, the sensors can immediately detect that somebody is using the wrong space, and it can highlight to a dashboard saying that there is a violation taking place. All those violations accumulate, and that gives you a sense of the risk that you're undertaking with people doing this thing. And if the risk level goes up, you can send a message, maybe subtly or maybe on the screen itself, that's saying that, guys, this area has been a lot of violations, please follow rules. Or you can have a nudge kind of email going out to that particular department saying, hey guys, follow the rules, which is not for the benefit of everybody. There is a lot of violations taking place. So we have enabled that kind of solution using sensors that can help with social distancing compliance. Occupancy-based cleaning is another thing that can be helped with with sensors. So these sensors detect where people have been sitting. In the early days, particularly with large flow plates, you're going to have the situation where not many people are showing up. So for the cleaning team to know at the end of the day where people are sitting is immensely valuable. So occupancy-based cleaning is essentially that. The sensors tell you which spaces are occupied, and the cleaning team at the end of the day can go and pay particular attention to those spaces. Not doesn't mean that other spaces are not clean, but particular attention to those spaces that are occupied so that you can get a much higher level of assurance of cleaning as well. So that's the cleaning, end of day cleaning solution. And the cleaning supervisor is given an access to log into the system and say that, yes, at the end of the day, this has been cleaned. And by doing that, they can actually write to the spot tags that you remember that we had stuck on the desk. They can virtually write to the spot tags saying that that spaces has been cleaned. So that the next day when somebody comes and scans the spot tag using the QR code, it says it's been cleaned at midnight or whatever, whenever that shift was completed. An alternative to that is what's called daytime cleaning. This is a handheld tool. It's a simple scan, shoot, and a shoot and scan tool. You conduct your cleaning and you simply scan the spot tag and it says it marked the space as clean. There's a little demo piece here which talks about how this is done. Very straightforward. You just pick up the tool and the cleaner has this. They scan the tag and it says cleaning started. Now you can do it in 1 or 2 steps. You can have the cleaning in progress and then cleaning finished, so that you have a before and after timestamp, so you can measure exactly the duration of cleaning that is taking the cleaners. Or you can simply have a one scan approach which says that the clean has been done by the scan when the scan is completed. So that's a simple demo of the tool that we have built for the cleaners to use in conjunction with the spot tag. Finally, we talked about congestion management. This is a very important one in terms of social distancing. One of the ways of achieving social distancing is you don't allow for congestion. And the way you do that is by monitoring activity in rooms such as washrooms and in cafe stations and things like that, where you have a limit for the number of people to be in an area, and you have an indicator outside the space saying there are too many people, so don't go in. The beauty is with the sensors that we have, which is completely anonymous, which completely does not have any personally identifiable information. All it can see is blobs, as you can see on the screen, of hotspots, which are indicative of people out there. These sensors are able to then count the number of people and say, okay, you know what, don't go to those washrooms because it's too busy. Or there's only one more person in there, you're allowed, you can go in. Even before the chance of social distancing violation can take place, you simply stop the possibility of that by just preventing that congestion. This is a tool that we have deployed now quite widely in our London customer base. So it's something that I think could be really useful for managing congestion in washrooms and other common areas. And finally, I just like to cover one aspect of the long-term strategy of all these investments. Where is this all going? We believe that over time, businesses will want to optimize their global portfolio or national portfolio of property. Working from home is going to become quite popular. And as a result, businesses are going to be stuck with a lot of space that they probably either don't need or they can optimize better so that people can use the space more effectively. And knowing which spaces are used with what amount could be a key factor in deciding how to manage your real estate property across the nation and across the world. And this is where our portfolio optimization process, using the sensors, using the data analytics that we can provide on how the space is being used, can make a significant difference in that activity. Also, managing meeting rooms. We know that there are meeting rooms of different sizes. How do you measure and right size the room as you're evolving your meeting room strategy? It's important to have more meeting rooms because obviously there's always a challenge, but what size should they be? And how that is changing over time post COVID could be something quite valuable for businesses. And that's where our meeting room analysis capability with our TIM sensors can be quite helpful. So those are some of the insights on the capacity management side of things. There are a lot of benefits in managing and measuring and implementing solutions for optimizing real estate. We have some great case studies. This is from a financial services company. This is pre-COVID, but obviously this topic has become much more interesting post-COVID. But this case study showed how this particular business revealed a surplus of nearly 7,000 desks they had worldwide. That resulted in significant savings in real estate. And with that savings, they could actually reinvest that into the real estate and make these spaces much more valuable and much more exciting for people to be in, which is going to be even more important in the future, where the experience of the user coming into the workplace will be very important. And the investment was the whole savings was reinvested in much higher quality buildings, much more open, healthier areas, healthier kind of environments, that the few days that the people come into work out of their total working time, they enjoy a very healthy and a very productive work environment, which is why people will want to come into work in the first place. Which nicely brings me to the area which we believe will going to be very, very important going forward, which is the focus on health and wellness at work. This is so social distancing is the safety aspect of it. The long term implications of the safety aspect is the general health and wellness. We all know that there is a lot of studies out there that are pointing to the fact that coronavirus is significantly impacted by some air quality parameters. And this is to start with, this is humidity. Humidity is a big factor in how the virus can transmit across the air. The second big factor, there was an Italian study that was done where particulates, the number of suspended particles in air, was an important factor. And if somebody wants a reference to that, I'm happy to kind of just drop me a line and I can share that with them. And the third important factor would be the carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is an indication of occupancy in a particular area as well. So these are some of the parameters that can affect the health of the environment that people are spending in near term. But there are several other environmental aspects that characterize the wellness of the space. The temperature. I'm right now boiling in this room. I must tell you that. But the temperature is very important for people to be productive. The light levels also quite important. And noise, another characteristic that a lot of research has been done, and other gaseous materials like equivalent CO2, which represents the nitrous compounds, and VOC, the volatile organic compounds, which is typically from drying paint or from rotting food and things like that. Those are critical things in the perfumes and things like that. Those are typically volatile organic compounds. Those are all very, very important parameters that determine how healthy and how um, welcoming a space is. And by measuring those, you can actually characterize how the space is performing. And we at Freespace are busy, like the one you see on the right. That's a carbon dioxide sensor. We are busy in releasing such products that help you monitor these, but also give you the intelligence of when such spaces are going out of their normal operating zone, and how, when do you have to take action. So that is the longer term implication of this focus on social distancing of people's health. But we believe it's all for the good. So, there's going to be a lot of thinking, hard thinking, about real estate, about offices, and how they can make the place much more safer for employees in the future. So, with that, I'd like to wrap up the talk. I hope it was not too overwhelming. There's a lot of information we covered in that conversation. We A few takeaways for you to think about. We talked about low cost solutions that are available now to enable social distancing at work. We talked about a simple technology solution that was demonstrated using the spot smart tags, digital signage, and CAD, AutoCAD. We talked about the mobile app and the safe cleaning system that can be used to complement this approach as an added investment. And finally, we talked about occupancy and environment sensors that can add significant value for the long term in corporate real estate planning. So, with that, I'd just like to wrap up the conversation. Thank you very much for your time listening to us. And if there's any questions, happy to answer them. Uh, hand it right back to you, Chloe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Raj. That was a great session. Let's have a look at some of the questions we've had come in from the live chat.
Mhm.
The first one, do employees need to wear face coverings or PPE to protect themselves in the workplace?
I would say yes, to be on the safe side. Now, it's incredibly difficult to sit for a whole day with your PPE. My wife is a doctor, and she bears the brunt of this. She comes back home extremely exhausted. It's quite a traumatizing thing to sit on, three levels of PPE, and they are particularly exposed because they're conducting operations for a whole lot of duration. So my take, and that's my personal take, the responsible thing to do is to wear PPE when you are among other colleagues. Obviously, when you're away, sitting isolated, like we are sitting, like I'm sitting in this enclosed room, I can take the discretion of not wearing it. But when I'm in close proximity, when I can't avoid that 2 meter kind of social distancing, it's a good idea to keep your PPE with you and on you.
Next one that's come in, when should employees be excluded from the workplace?
These are very, very technical questions, which are got straight technical answers. I am not the expert in the government advisory. We should simply follow the government advisory of employees that are not supposed to work, the people that are self-isolating, the people that are vulnerable. There are people that are not well, obviously, or deemed not well based on their conditions. But I think excluded is a very, very strong term, and one should not take that lightly. You don't exclude people for any reason other than the fact that it's a safety issue for them to come into work. So you have to be mindful of the fact that there are situations when people need to come into work, and they are not set up to work from home. So I would say that the work requirement of coming to work has to be as inclusive as possible. But obviously, the aspects around health is important. So for whatever reason, if the employee is either too vulnerable or likely risk, that needs considerable consideration. But obviously, the guidance is fairly clear, I think, in terms of what businesses needs to do in order to be safe.
Next one says, thanks, Raj. I might have missed this in the session, but what are the regulations around air conditioning?
Oh, air conditioning is a big, big topic. I believe right now the guidance from authorities is around using 100% outside air. That's a very, very tall order. If you think about days like this, where um, the outside air is quite warm, bringing that 100% in, and pretty much no internal recirculation is quite a challenge. But that is the guidance that's been given. Again, I'm not an air conditioning expert, so I would not want to make any extension beyond that. But the guidance, I believe, right now on air exchange is definitely 100% outside air. There has also been stricter regulation on monitoring your filters. That's been stricter regulation on the administering the humidity levels, which I believe there's a guidance. Now, there's a regulation and guidance, so you need to do your homework there. But there's a guidance, I believe, of 40% relative humidity as a minimum. But I don't think that's a regulation, but it's a guidance around that. And I know for a fact, we've done a lot of studies on relative humidity of buildings. I know for a fact that buildings often drop below 30% relative humidity. So I think FM managers will be looking very closely on that to see how they can make sure that they're kind of trying to achieve those guidance that has been laid out. But I would again I would not hazard to kind of volunteer regulatory requirements on these things. I would encourage you to look at guidance from the government on these topics.
The next one in is around shared office blocks. So the question is, any advice you can share that we can share with our co-occupiers of the building so that they're being as vigilant as us? We share lifts and stairs, for example.
Mm, mm. Um, I think there's an emergence of people wanting to have a common place to share information with their co occupiers of a space. I think the key things are making sure that people are following those guidelines, using posters and using visible indicators of occupancy. Um, we would recommend in common areas, at least the ones that you have access to, displaying something visibly that you are practicing certain rules that encourages others to touch base and ask you questions as to what you're doing. um, Displays could be something that is visual, that has, say for example, a signage that shows your office space is following certain rules and certain guidance information. With respect to common areas, like I said, there must be a common landlord that you're working with. You need to have a conversation with that landlord. They are legally responsible for those common areas, so they will have guidance. In fact, many of our occupiers we are seeing are told by their landlords what the expected and the accepted social distancing regulations are going to be that they have to follow. So there are some landlords that are actually overriding the occupiers' guidance on social distancing, and they are saying they are stipulating the requirements themselves. So I would encourage to speak to your landlord to request that they have to institute that, at least for the common areas such as stairs and elevators. But uh, as an individual occupier, I would say to be as visible as possible at your entrance, so that your neighbors could kind of learn from that to see how you are kind of visibly leading the way of saying you're following certain guidelines and rules. I hope that helps, but I think that it really comes down to the landlord in shared spaces, because they are legally responsible for that.
Fantastic. The next one says, I'm a small business owner with a team of 5. I'm unsure of where to begin with bringing my staff members back. One is currently isolating. What
Mm.
would you suggest is my first step?
Yeah, so this is a tricky one. We are a small business here in the UK as well. We've got around 15 people in the UK. We've got 40 people in India and other places, more employees in other locations. And it was a tricky thing getting started. We are now operational in our workplace, but getting started was a bit tricky. What is important is to have some traction of very few people, very small number of people, only required number of people coming into work. So I would suggest maybe 2 of you, because I don't think lone working is a good idea anyway, or shouldn't be happening anyway, because there are other kind of implications of lone working. Maybe two, maybe 3 of you agree to decide to come in, and you create a little track record of your practices of coming in, the rituals around coming into work. For example, we decided that we're going to leave our front door open all the time. We can, because there is a corridor coming into work. So our front door is open, so no touch points. You simply walk in, the first person comes in, simply walks in. Simple things like that. Coffee stations cleaned down regularly. Touchless wipe hand sanitization stations being kept in places. A lot of wipes all over the place. So get a few people coming in, get these practices being used more regularly, encourage others to follow. No handshaking. It takes a little while to get into the rhythm, and then let those three people describe those experiences to others. And five is a small number, but there are other businesses with 20 people, 30 people. Let those three people describe the experiences to others, and then obviously people who are self isolating, who are isolating, should not come in, but others can be encouraged as and when they feel comfortable to come in. But obviously follow that social distancing rules. Even a small office, we have socially distanced our spaces. We have put a gap between every space that people are sitting at. So we have made all those practices. We measured, we made sure that the distances are more than 2 meters. This was 4 or 5 weeks ago. So if you start small, I think it's a good way to bring people back in.
Next one says, thanks, Raj, a really useful session. A quick one. Anything different you'd do for having external guests in? Would it be best to keep this strictly to one area or one room of the office just to keep staff safe?
Yeah, we limit that very, very carefully. We have a external desk, external guest register, which we know very sure that only one guest is coming at a time. We can't entertain more than one person. That's a rule that we have. We have, although, created a room for max 4 people, which means two from our side and two from the guests, and that's the only room we use. Once the room is used, we wipe down the room. One of us have taken the responsibility to wipe down that room, but we have limited that as well to some extent. That the sense that we allow only one guest per day to come in if it is needed. Of course, our business is different. We don't have that many people coming in on a regular basis. Our customers are all working from their offices. We are the ones going there normally, but we do have suppliers coming in. But we have isolated it to one room. That's it. And then we also have isolated it to the guest register, so that we have whoever is coming in is monitored, and who's logged, basically, in case we have to go back to them with information on one of us falling ill. But yeah, I would say keep that to a very tightly controlled at this stage. Of course, that has to change as summer winds down and business picks up. But again, I would say that take it slowly and start building a level of confidence and a way of working for the office before you kind of open the doors, figuratively speaking.
And the last question we've had come in, how do your staff members feel about being back in the office? I'm nervous to suggest a return to work with my team, as I don't want to pressure them back if they are uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was interesting actually. I mean, we never pressured anybody, but we uh, decided that we're going to have a rule that at least two people will have to agree that they're coming in order for the office to be open. And it turned out that I was always one of them. So I started coming in. I'm the CEO. I started coming in. So I would talk to two or three of my colleagues and say, okay, are you planning to come in? And if they said yes on a particular day, we would say, okay, we are coming in on that day, and we would simply come in. And for the first 2 weeks, this was almost 5 weeks ago, when things started opening up, and we said, okay, if you want to come in, then two of us can come in, not more than two. At that time it was strictly only two. And we would come in and we would start putting these practices in place. So I know I was taking that initiative, and I waited for one more person to put their hand up, and we would do that. As things opened up, as the rules kind of relaxed a little bit more, we just started talking about our fact that we are in the office, and we started using the mobile app that I shared with you as well, where others could see from their app, when they had downloaded the app, they could see who's in the office. So that was a point of curiosity for some time, and then more people started to come in and talk about it, and that's how it opened up, really. It is very people are very nervous, especially coming back in, after being away for a while. They were very nervous, so assuring them was very important, making sure they're made welcome with wipes on their tables, and the practices of numbering, of naming the coffee mugs and things like that. All that things, to little things, to make them feel assured, but at the same time enforcing that practice as well. And we left together. If we had to leave quickly, we left together. If somebody had to leave, we all left, basically. So then that went from 2 to 3 to 4. We are up to 5 people in the office right now, which is quite healthy. But that's about it. We're not grown. We're not forcing anybody. There are 2 people within our group that are self-isolating. and there's absolutely no pressure for them to come, and everybody understands that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Raj. We have had some inquiries in about slides and the resources that you've used. So
Mhm.
I have put Raj's LinkedIn profile in the chat, so you would be able to connect with him and ask any questions you have after the session.
And
Raj,
we'll also be posting the video on our website. And if you want, visit our website, www.afreespace.com. Go to the webinars video section, and you should be able to see that.
fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this webinar. I'm sure our audience will agree that was a great session. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
No, I think thank you very much for your time, everyone. I think it's a challenging time for all. Nobody wished that we were here, but here we are. But I believe it's a good thing from here on. Hopefully, the offices of the future will be designed to do what it does the best, that it gets the best out of people. So as long as that is going to be the case, I think there's a future is bright, and hopefully we can use technology to help us to achieve that end. So thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate being here and enjoyed the time.
Thanks, Raj. Our next webinar in the Lockdown Learning for Business series takes place this Thursday with Starland Bank and Anorak as they discuss business banking and protection insurance. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of today's webinar coming at 5 p.m. today. You can find the replay and future webinars at www.freshbusinessthinking.haysummit.com or by clicking on the link in the comment section. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Raj.
Thank you.